Hey guys, Michael Ketchen here with another episode of the Michael Ketchen Show, and Matthew Hitchcock is back.
How we doing?
Kicked Shane out, said he had enough. No more, he's coming back, reclaiming his spot. But no, I had to have Matt here because as we were thinking about things we wanted to share, because we always get, right? Oh, it looks so easy. It's real estate. It's so easy. It's so fun.
Instagram makes everything look real easy and pretty.
On purpose. Shout out ASR, making it look real good in Bennett Studios. We wanted to tell some tenant horror stories. We wanted to do our top 10, and I mean, when I said to Matt, I'm like, we've always said we could write a book on the things we've dealt with already in this industry. And people hear these stories and go, oh my God. And I'm going to throw it to you. We're going to go through some of these, but I think it should all start with something that happened early that started this whole tenant kind of horror story thing and way to do it. We realized the first trip we took, my 35th birthday, so this would be about 5 years ago at this point.
Yep.
Me, you, and Hannah go to Vegas. And it was the first time the three of us had gone away together since starting the company. It was the first time the three of us had ever gone away. Everything's easy. I think we've only got like 40 or 50 doors at this point. It's nothing crazy. And all of a sudden, all three of our phones start exploding in the middle of like, what casino was it? Like the Cosmopolitan.
I think it was right before we were going out. It was literally going to be New Year's Eve. And I think we were getting ready to go out to the club for New Year's Eve.
And it was bing, 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 bing.
Yeah.
And we got word that the street, Manchester Street, actually the street that we're redeveloping, was being barricaded off. And there was a standoff between law enforcement and our tenant that, come to find out, had a meth lab in their apartment, unbeknownst to us. They had been keeping it quiet. No other tenants had complained. So our usual filters hadn't caught any of it. And yeah, that was a fun time. That was a really good time.
Very interesting. And we learned too that unfortunately, people that sometimes look good on paper don't end up being actually good tenants.
Yeah, it turns out they cook meth.
Yeah.
That does happen. So we're sitting there realizing we don't want to deal with this. And that was kind of where I call it, like, that was the first time this really had to go from being a hobby to a business. Because we realized after that, and now we've been down the journey, but that's when we learned, like, okay, let's do some masterminds in education. Let's learn how the business works. Let's get a call center.
Call center was a huge one.
Message center. So we don't deal with any of this, how we can have employees. And we started really making a shift. But man, when you were across the country and you could see the SWAT teams on your little blink cameras, like coming in to just burst into this little studio apartment.
And they had the fire trucks on each end because they were worried that, you know,
the
whole building was just going to burn down.
Go up,
and we were like, oh, what are we going to do if the building burns down?
Oh my God, I can't. So I've got a few. The way it's going to work, I've got a few, and then I'm going to throw it to you, but I got a couple of fun stories I'll sprinkle in as well, too. But with that said, first of the 10 Commonwealth Collective resident horror stories. What do you want to kick us off?
I'm going to go to a building that we used to manage over on Mechanic Street in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Where you can't make the famous Matthew Hitchcock quote, you can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit.
You can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. We raised the rents in this building by what, 30%?
30%. We were going to buy it. The rent roll was, I think it was like 22 grand. When we sold it, we got it up to 44,000.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I mean,
it was wild. So when we had these two girls that, you know, again, filled out applications. They had jobs.
Look great on paper.
Decent, you know. I mean, when you're dabbling in trying to refinance buildings and trying to get jack up rents, sometimes you got to get in the weeds and get Facebook people, you know.
Yep.
So that's how it goes. But so yeah, they filled out applications. I mean, they were okay on paper. They weren't anything stellar. However, we realized a couple months in, they started to struggle to pay rent. All of a sudden, she goes, oh, so my girlfriend, she actually lost all her followers on Instagram. And I was like, what does that have to do with the rent? I'm very confused. I don't understand. She goes, well, she used to have like this online modeling type thing. And I was like, oh, no. You didn't put this part of the income on your application. So they were problem tenants anyways, and the fact that it seemed like every
her grandmother
month,
was dying every month.
Oh, the grandmother died like constantly. The grandfather died constantly. There was always a reason why the rent was late. I'll give them some credit that for 3 years they did pay their rent. It's just that it was consistently late.
Yes,
but
like
they
we
paid
would
it.
start the eviction process, and during the 7 days they would figure it out every time. Well, and then we found out how they were figuring it out.
Correct. So then that leads to the other part of the horror story with them was the fact that we found out that they had an OnlyFans or they had a Twitter or whatever it was that they were filming some nostalgia and some things. when they did that, though, they happened to clog the bathroom toilet. Or actually, sorry, the bathtub.
The bathtub, yes.
The bathtub. And when they clogged it, it was because they were recreating some scene with blood and lube and things because it was Halloween and they had masks on. So they called us saying, hey, we have a plumbing issue. And we're like, okay. So we had someone go over to fix it. But then we kind of knew their situation. And it happened to come up online of how it actually was really clogged.
Oh, yes. Yes. So that's where our plumber, in his infinite wisdom, we no longer use this company, had talked to these girls during many of their service calls, went out. And this is actually how we found out they had an OnlyFans, because we had to do a correction after the plumber made a comment because he found the girls online and creeped out the girls, as it probably should have, even though that was their chosen profession. So now they're reaching out to us saying, this guy's a creep. He's in our apartment. He's talking about our professional work or whatever it is.
I think he put on like their cat ears or something like that and took a selfie and sent it to them. Like it was
something so unprofessional that now we have to give a credit for this creep who's not even part of our company for the girls that clogged our tub shooting their OnlyFans scene.
Mm-hmm. And on top of which, it was brutal because the water in that building, like it's just all old.
So bad.
So it spilled over and then it was leaking down into the bottom unit. So you had to address the bottom unit. So not only did they destroy essentially their unit, but they also affected the bottom unit, which made a whole disaster.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That actually leads to, I mean, thank God they finally got evicted, but, and I'm sure we have, you got as many units as we do now. I guarantee we have other OnlyFans patrons, if you will.
Yeah.
But staying in that vein, I was going to share one of my favorite horror stories from Mechanic Street. Mm-hmm. The resident that beat up the other upstairs resident because her husband got caught buying certain services from the young lady upstairs who was finding other creative ways to pay her rent. Mm-hmm. Keep in mind, we rented to this woman because her father was on the lease and was a pastor and was also co-signing for her lease. So we thought, what could go wrong here? A few months in, we found out that she was turning tricks to pay the rent.
Yep.
Do you recall that one? Because that was a fun one as well.
I do recall that one.
Yes. Yes, and that was a fun mess.
And then I think both parties we end up having to evict. One wasn't paying, then the girl that was doing the services also fell behind and wasn't paying. And that was the one. Do you remember that when we went to go evict her? She was very combative at first. Then it was starting to get to like the end where she was really going to get evicted. And I went in to, I don't know, pick up a money order because she's like, I can give you part of it. She tried leaving a bowl of Skittles out and was like, hey, like if you want to take some Skittles.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I don't know what's coated on this to try to poison me, so I am not going to take any of these Skittles. She left a note. She wasn't even there. So
take the Skittles. Taste the rainbow, Matthew.
Yeah.
She wanted you to taste something. She wanted to taste. It wasn't good. It was not good on that one.
Thank you.
All right. Horror story number 2. What do you got?
Let me see. I might stay with Mechanic Street.
Oh, there's so many.
We could just stay. We'll kind of like work our way up our buildings, I guess. Horror story in the sense it was, I guess, more sad sort of than horror, but horror in the sense that this gentleman was a former veteran.
Yeah.
And living in the building. I mean, overall a good guy, but obviously had a lot of mental issues. And unfortunately, he would hang out on the deck a lot. And it was starting to get to a point where he was drinking during the day and he was making it an issue for everybody. Like everybody else was concerned for his health, which was concerning them, which started to make people like want to move out. They didn't know how he would behave. Ultimately, again, not an evil person. He wasn't, he just didn't try and attack anybody, nothing like that.
Yeah, he was super passive. He was super easygoing.
And
that's what made it even harder.
Yeah. And so finally, there was a couple times where he actually passed out on his kitchen floor. The door was open to the deck, so tenants could see this. Then we had, police went there, ambulances went there, they serviced, everything was fine. And then one day, unfortunately, he ended up slipping and falling in the bathtub.
And he passed away.
He ended up passing away. So that was the first time, I think, for me anyways, that we really had to deal with someone passing away in a unit.
Was that before or after Pine Street? Because I thought it was after.
See, So Pine Street we can go to for you in a moment. I think Pine Street I was a little bit removed because I was still in my W-2 job, and you may have left, or maybe you had a day off of like work from school and you just happened to go up to Pine Street.
No,
because this one's one that I actually dealt with a little bit more directly. So if there was another dead body first, then that might be a different situation.
Well, and again, to your point, it was sad, but the reason it's a horror story is, everybody doesn't think about that side of it. You buy enough real estate long enough, people are going to pass away in your units. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And then what you learn quickly is, and this is your tip for the day, there's a certain process and procedure that goes into this. Like there's certain damages, there's certain cleanup crews, there's certain types of insurance like you have to handle because it can be, it can be very costly to you as the landlord, actually, believe it or not, which is really sad on top of everything because there's bodily fluid, there's all that other stuff. But yeah, dealing with death, you're in real estate long enough, it's going to happen, but it's definitely a horror story when it happens because that's a call no one wants. Since then we've had it. It's happened in Cleveland a couple of times. It's happened, I think it happened in Northgate once. It's happened in Pine Street twice, which is actually my next horror story. So I had just left education because Pine Street was February of 2019. So I think I was the only one doing the full time with you and Hannah still the W-2s phasing out. And it's the day after closing. And I end up having to go up there because we get a message from a girl we inherited an eviction. And that was still kind of new to us because at this point we only have one other multifamily building.
Yeah.
We're managing Mechanic Street and we had just got our profit share thing. Actually, I don't even know if we had Mechanic Street at that point. History goes either way. So she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I can't be evicted. I'm traumatized. I'm traumatized. I shouldn't laugh. I'm traumatized because my best friend's dead in the basement from an OD." I'm like, what the fuck? What? What do you mean? Who puts this in a text? So I'm like flying up here in my car. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to see. I have no idea when we get there. Turns out the police had dealt with it, and it actually was the day before. We didn't even know.
Yeah.
They got into the building. They dealt with it. They took out the body on the police report. But yeah, I'm like, this woman needs to be evicted immediately. And she was, this piece of shit, was leveraging her best friend being dead in the basement as a reason to not evict her for not paying her rent. How insane is this? And I'll never forget that as long as I'm alive, because I was like, what kind of people are and that's what we talk about. We go in and clean up these buildings, but it's like, think about the people that are out there. It's like, I cannot picture, like, Matt's dead in the basement. I'm like, hey, please, Mr. Landlord, don't evict me. He's dead in the basement. He's overdosed in the basement. What the fuck? Like, no, like, leave. Like, what are we doing here? But that was, oh, man, Pine Street. What a good time.
Yeah.
All right, what's another one that you have?
I'm going to go Amherst Street next, I think.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
So I think this was actually the first time we realized that we need to start walking through every single unit.
Oh, yeah.
Because initially we would walk through most of them, but we were so naive back then when we first started that, the broker or the agent, whoever it was, would show us a good amount. And then sometimes every once in a while they'd be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, the key is just not working on this one." And we're like, "Oh, okay, no worries."
Yeah, not connecting any dots.
And then we would close in the building. So anyways, this time it bit us because we walked afterwards through all of these units and we were like, what is going on over this place? And then we know that people undermanage a lot of buildings, but this was like severe. When people talk about slumlords, this was the pinnacle of slumlord.
And we won't say his name because he's still very well known in the area. As he's rolling through town in his was it Bentley or Rolls
Royce? He pulled up in a white Bentley to show us the property.
Yeah, he's in his Bentley. Meanwhile, you've got people
because he was a broker and the seller, I believe.
And this is why Amherst Street's a building where I'm glad that it's me, Matt, and Hannah are the owners, because you can do the right thing. And sometimes the right thing isn't the most cost effective thing, because we did a lot of the right things in Amherst Street. We paid to move 2 to 3 tenants.
So this specific gentleman, first unit, walked in, and I remember I knocked on the door, and this guy opens it, and mind you, there's just a waft of cigarette smoke because he's just smoking in that unit nonstop,
like multiple boxes a day.
Oh, at least. And so you could see like the yellow on the door because it was a little bit of a screen, but when he opened it, cockroaches like fell out like almost on top of my head.
Yeah.
And I had to step back. I was like, oh. And then he had trash that was, again, unfortunately, had a lot of mental illness, had trash that was leading all the way up to his sink because he wasn't throwing stuff away. One, he wasn't putting in a barrel. If there was a barrel there, it was just overflowed to the point that it was just building up over.
And this is a person who should not have been living by themselves.
Correct. Likely. Shouldn't have been living by themselves. So unfortunately, in those circumstances, like we have to rehab that unit. So that sometimes leads into an eviction. We worked the best we could. This was one of the more creative ones that we tried. We tried taking a horror story and turning it. I mean, we did. We turned it into a better situation.
Yeah, he lived with us for years.
Yeah. He ended up actually moving into this building. So we told him, like, we got with his dad. We said, hey, like, he's not fit to really live by himself, or especially not in this unit. There was cockroaches. There was mice. The walls were all yellow from him smoking.
Yep.
So we had to bring that unit all the way down to the studs, fix all the plumbing, and we end up, I actually remember, I think I got a list of stuff from him. I went to Walmart and bought, like, because we were like, you can't even take this stuff with you. If we're going to put you in another one of our buildings, it's infested with bed bugs and cockroaches. We can't even have you take your TV or mattress or anything.
We bought a TV. We bought a mattress. We bought clothes.
Yep. I got a little bit of decor. I got him like a rug.
We did all that and moved him in. And it was literally, like, to Matt's point, I mean, I don't remember if we got it all the walls or not, but I know we definitely had
that one. I think got pretty gutted.
Yeah, you know, I don't know, just permitting wise, I don't know where we were, you know, on that. But no, it was definitely a big remodel. All jokes aside, to get him over. But yeah, that was a horror story because you're dealing with a person who didn't have all of his faculties, I don't even know the fucking word I'm trying to say, but basically he wasn't, you know, with it per se, but I guess come to find out he had suffered a traumatic brain injury years earlier. We finally got hold of his father, and then what we did, which was wild, we actually paid for a cleaner to come clean his apartment every 2 weeks while he lived with us because he just needed help. He physically couldn't. He didn't understand the concept of keeping the unit clean. And actually, after about another 3 years, he unfortunately took a turn again for the worse. But again, back to Commonwealth Collective, you know, being awesome, being a great company, we found an organization that took people like him and provided assisted living.
Yep.
And we got him relocated. So horror story turned good story.
Yeah, it's always
when we walked in that unit, oh my God.
Some of those are horror stories, but then you also have to have a certain level of sympathy to try and. But again, it's a fine line because you're running a business, but you also want to have that human element.
Yeah.
Some people obviously just straight dirtbags. He wasn't doing it out of spite or anything. It's just that's just what he thought was an okay way to live.
That leads to the next one at Amherst Street that I had. The gentleman who worked in the restaurant and started to break down and crying because he thought he was going to get deported from the country if we kicked him out. This poor guy was living at the same building, the same slumlord, paying like $400 a month. Well, the reason he was paying $400 a month, to this day, when I tell people, and keep in mind, again, this is the, poor Hannah almost never comes on these building walks. She came on Amherst building walk. She did come on this one,
yeah.
I think that's why she's never gone back on another one again. Because we're like, it's not usually this bad. This poor guy was living in such a disgusting unit. His sink, his toilet, and his tub had not flushed in 3 to 6 months. This didn't work. And he was afraid to say anything. Shit running down the walls because he had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Again, doing the right thing, just absolutely disgusting and overwhelming. We gave him, it's called Cash for Keys. We gave him like $2,000.
Yep, $2,000.
And said, we're going to take it as is. Don't worry anything. And he took $2,000 and just disappeared somewhere. And he was so thankful. He was so...
Remember he had his his parents like picture up on the wall with like the incense?
Yep.
And there was like cockroaches wandering behind it.
My
and
God, dude. The amount... We probably have Scott on the podcast. Shout out to, what's his company? The Exterminator.
Identified Pest Control. Yep.
Because...
Yeah, he worked
the battle
extensively.
scars that he had. We have never spent so much. Still to this day, this is a 16-unit apartment building. This isn't a multiple complex, and we have a 100-unit building. We don't spend this much on pest control. I mean, he had to keep going and going.
Yeah.
And the good thing is Amherst is now. I mean, it's one of our cash cows. Yeah. And now it's a freaking cash cow.
Yeah, it was a lot of education with the tenants with that too.
Oh my God!
Because you had to teach we actually had to take his flyers and his wording and give it to tenants to tell them this is what we need to do to treat it, and you have to work with us in order for this to get better.
Yeah, because it was bad.
Yeah.
It was so bad. But you know what? We got through it, and it was great. So those are a couple of Amherst. I mean, dude, I can still picture the shit coming down the walls. It's just so fucking bad. What's the next one you got?
I think I got to go back to Amherst. Because this one was interesting because this is when I first started dating Amy.
Oh, God.
So I remember having to go to Amherst Street, and again, to the point of like educating people. When we went in the units, we went in with Scott, and he goes, and this is actually, I think, the first time we really dealt hardcore with bed bugs. We were walking through,
Oh, God,
and like
I
they
forgot about
were,
this unit. Oh,
they were
my God.
like visible. Like sometimes bed bugs are just kind of hanging out on the mattress. You don't really know. Tenants
Oh, I forgot.
message you. They start biting you. This one, Scott's like, no, see that over there? That's clusters of them. Like that's like
It was
all those
so bad.
those specks that look like just pepper. But he's like, those are all bed bugs. So I'm walking through looking at this unit, figuring out like what we have to do for rehab. Then I have to give them a notice saying, hey, you guys have to bag up all your clothes. And again, they were drug addicts in the first place. When I also tell this story to a lot of people and I tell them about this building, because of the fact, to your point, they're only paying $400, you got to realize that these people are like, they were pretty much one step from homeless.
Yeah.
So you had the option of either living on the street or you could live in this rat-infested,
But they
bed
needed
bug
help.
infested.
Yeah, they needed help. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember going there though, and then I called Scott and I was like, yeah, so that unit's pretty bad. It's going to need to be serviced, blah, blah, blah. He goes, okay, did you wear anything when you went in there? And I was like, no. He goes, when you get home, take your clothes off outside and put them in the wash immediately. So I go home. Amy's working at home. She sees me on the back deck and I'm like stripping naked, taking off all my clothes. And I yelling, give me a market basket bag. She goes, what are you doing? The neighbors can see you. So she brings the market basket bag out. I put it in and then I go downstairs. I wash my clothes. But she go, and I was like, yeah, I went to a unit that had like some bed bugs in it, but I wasn't really wearing anything that I probably should have.
Oh, my God.
So that was an interesting one.
That was Amy's introduction to Commonwealth.
It was one of the early ones. That was a wild story for us. She goes, why would you ever do that? I was like, get shit done.
Yo, 100%. And so I'm going to take it to Northgate because, like we said, this is going to end up being like a part 2, a part 3, and a part 4.
Because we'll probably have new stories by then.
Oh, my God. But so Northgate. So my favorite one at Northgate, and that's putting it politely because this is not true, is when we buy the building and there's a tenant there who thinks he's the mayor of Northgate. You remember this guy or not? He had the 4-bedroom that was illegal.
Yep, I do.
So he's given the maintenance shit, and we kept on the old property manager for the first 30 days like we usually do. Caught her stealing, shout out. Not even a horror story. She didn't even make the top 10, but always check your non-employees because they're usually doing something wrong. Caught her stealing from the old owner. And she's like, he runs the roost. This guy somehow had keys to every unit, and he's telling everybody what to do, and he's like, they're not kicking me out of my unit because we're trying to start construction. So I've been told that I have a bit of a personality. So I go, all right, well, I'm going to go show him there's a new sheriff in town. So we go down. This is after like a month of this guy like basically refusing to let anybody into his unit, thinking he's making the rules. He's telling people at the building what to do. He's just been an absolute fucking nightmare. I bang on the door and he goes, who is it? I go, the owner. And he opens up the door. Now I'm thinking Shaquille O'Neal. Like I'm mentally psyching up
Yeah.
to be like, all right, fucking cocaine cowboy. Like here we go, right? Like hella high water. And I'm just ready. I'm like, I'm hoping to God we're going to this dark place, right? You know how I get.
Yeah.
And he opens the door, and it's the most meek little old dude, like a bad Whiskey Tango NASCAR fan I've ever seen in my life. And it totally de-escalated the whole thing. And I just went full principal mode. And I was like, hey, you got to cut the shit. You've been giving my staff a hard time. You got 30 days or this is going to get real messy. Do I make myself clear? And he's like, yes, sir. There'll be no more problems here, sir. I apologize. Cleaned out the unit and took off in a month. He was just a bully.
Yeah.
He wasn't used to it. But it took a whole month of him just making everyone's life. I mean, he's talking to our maintenance guys and threatening them. And dude, literally, like, I'm thinking like, remember the movie Friday?
Yeah.
I'm thinking Debo is in here.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to have to call like Raph. Like, I'm going to have to call Shane.
They did hype him up as being like this thing.
I'm like, who am I going to have to call over here? And then this little bullies. How you deal with every bully? They will listen at home. Get aggressive. They're bullies. They're bitches. They don't know what they're doing. But that was a nightmare in the sense for a month that we couldn't get anything done in that unit. This guy had taken a 2-bedroom unit and a 2-bedroom unit. He got state rent, right? State rent from the state for both apartments and punched a wall through to make his own penthouse 4-bedroom unit. And the old owner let this go on for 6 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the why I can't. Oh, I almost said
Which
his
is
name.
great because we gained a unit back when we got the building.
It was amazing. So, but it's just absolutely crazy. Just horror stories. But yeah, I mean, that shows how bad some of these owners are. Like, they let this guy rule the whole like property, and that's what they do. They take advantage of it. They think it's their community. They think they're kings, and away they go. But all right, we'll go from there. Guys, thank you as always. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. And as always, bet on yourself.